So we want to do things with the URL. So we're going to use React Router. Does anybody ever use another web framework that includes routing? Anybody ever use a web framework like Rails or Django or something? Nope. All right, well, we're going to learn all about routing. But the question is, what is React Router? Who knows how to read? All right, go for it. Zach.
A JavaScript package that allows our URI.
What is?
Oh, a React router is a JavaScript package that allows our UI to stay in sync with our URL. Allows us to render specific components based on which routes match or don't match the current URL path.
Nicely done, sir. Thank you. So, routing in general keeps our UI in sync with the URL. So if you remember the first day, we had our little diagram of the laptop with the arrows going into the big question mark cloud and back. So server-side routing would happen in that big question mark, where we said we don't really care what happens. So far, all that's ever happened is we request index.html, we get index.html back. We're actually requesting a path to a file. But we want it to be so that we can say like /rooms/random. And it's not going to look for a folder named rooms and a folder named random. We want JavaScript to just take the URL and figure out which components we want to instantiate based on that. So that's what React Router allows us to do. But it doesn't happen on the server side. The server is going to give us index.html every time because that's the only actual HTML page we have. And then JavaScript on the client side in the browser is going to figure out which components to load based on just the URL. To get started, yarn add React Router DOM, adds it to your package.json, and installs it, puts it in your node modules folder. We'll actually do this in a minute. So React Router DOM, because we are specifically using the web version of this thing, just as we add React DOM. And then at the simplest, just import a router component from React Router and wrap your app component in that. You know, this is that one line you need inside index.js just to get React hooked up, right? You have to replace some element from the DOM, your empty element, with your app. Now you just put a router component around your app component, and you have React Router. Then you can define some routes. So here's two examples. There are two differences between these two things. So the first example is about the simplest possible. You tell it the path, so what path in the URL, and then you tell it which component to render when you hit that path. Doesn't get much simpler than that. That's really all there is to it in the simplest example. Second example here, instead of specifying a component, you can actually provide a render prop, which is going to be an actual render function that returns some JSX. Can anybody think of why you might do that instead of the other way? What's something you could do with the second way that you couldn't do with the first way? Yeah. Well, as long as you've defined the component. Can't pass any props the first way, can you? You're just telling it which component to render. So if you have any props to pass in, you would have to use a render prop like the second example. There's another difference, the word exact. So the first example would match /widgets, but it would also match /widgets/ something else. So /widgets/ 44, example, to load widget number 44. Or /rooms/ general if the path were /rooms. The second example will only match exactly the path /stuff. It would not match /stuff/ pancakes. Just /stuff. So that's with the exact prop. Yeah. Can you do anything with the state? It wouldn't be advised because it wouldn't be very declarative to do so, but you could always, I mean, the render function is just a function. As long as you return some JSX in the end, you could also do something else. But it probably wouldn't be a good idea. It'd probably be a better idea to just have it direct you to a new component and then modify state in the constructor of that component or something like that. Yeah.
I don't quite understand, like, when you pass widgets to the component, what is the component that we're going to render? everything, or is it like a piece of it?
It's whatever you want it to be. So we could say, if you visit the path /rooms/new, then we should render the new room form. So we would say that component when we hit that path. So it's saying certain components should get loaded in a certain context when a certain path is reached. We can put these routes anywhere in our app. They don't all have to go in like app.js or something. So we'll see quite a few examples of this. So that's defining routes. And then to actually get to those things, you can just use regular old ahref links, but it's better to use the link components that are included in React Router because they know your actual path, which may or may not be at the actual root of your website. So there's link and navlink. Syntax is very similar to real links, except that it's to instead of href. So that just links to that route. And the difference between the two is that navlink also puts a class of active on that link if it's the page you're already on. So a lot of times if you have like a tab navigation across the top, whatever page you're actually on will look different than the others, even though it's still just a link to that page. So this will add a class for you that you could use to style it. It won't style it for you. You still need to write the CSS for that, but it'll automatically put a class on there that lets it know this is the currently active link. So you can show it differently from the others. Sometimes you need sort of a wild card in there. If, for example, we wanted to load a specific widget or a specific chat room, like we wanted to say /rooms/general. We want them to be able to put any string there for general. We don't want to have to make a whole new route for every possibility. Or say we have Twitter and we want to be able to link to specific posts. We don't want to have to make a separate route for tweet number 93,658,932,489, right? And then another one for whatever number is after that. So you can use params for that. So here you'll see a route defined, path equals /about/:name. So that colon means that that is a param. So that could be /about/anything else. And whatever you put after /about/ will be the param called name. So what happens is React Router automatically sends some props to the component that you redirect to called history, match, and location. And the match param, or the match prop, contains whatever params were part of this path. So in this case, this is a page about props.match.params.name. Because the route that got us here had a param called name, that would get us here. So in this example, if I clicked on that link about Bob, this would say this is a page about Bob. Because the path that we used to get there was /about/Bob, which matches that route that's defined underneath. And so Bob would be assigned to the parameter named name because of that colon. And so we can get to it in the resulting component with props.match.params.name. So we'll see lots of examples of this. But does that make some sense at least? Get the general idea? So that's the match prop that gets sent. But there are three: history, location, and match. The history prop lets us interact with the browser's history. Part of HTML5 was the history API you could use to push new things onto history. You could simulate the back button, do all kinds of stuff like that without actually changing the page. So that's what we want to do, because we're never actually leaving index.html even when we change URLs. So what we do instead is we manipulate the history of the browser's history programmatically. It does it for us in the case of a link. But in the case of the history object, we can manually change it. If, for example, we needed to change pages when something other than clicking a link happens. For example, we create a new chat room and we want to automatically redirect to that room. The user didn't click a link. They added a form or added a room. So we could manipulate the history object to push the URL for the new room onto the stack. So that's the kind of thing you can do. So you can push new URLs onto history. You can go back, which totally simulates the back button. Go forward simulates the forward button. Go and passing in a number will go back that many places in history. Block does kind of what it sounds like, but we're not going to use that. So that is a quick overview of React Router. Let's see it in action.